hand, simultaneously. So I'm here today with our first guest who's got letters after her name. I've got Penny Power, OBE. She's an author, a speaker and a hugely successful entrepreneur. She describes herself as an accidental entrepreneur who took the plunge into self-employment in 1998 when spotting the huge gap in the market for business people to connect online. She launched the world's first social network for business, Ecademy. Is that how I say it?
Ecademy.
Ecademy?
That's it, yep.
So, hi Penny, thanks for coming.
You're welcome, it's lovely
And I'm going to look forward to talking to you because one of my favourite things, in general for doing and also for talking about is networking. So I assume that fits very much.
My baby, I love that.
Cool. Yeah. But over to you. I mean, just describe yourself, your career, etc. in 60 seconds. That's
Make it
condensed.
Well, it's been a stunning career. I love it. Not exactly what I thought it would be when I started out because I didn't want to go into business, which is why I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. I joined tech industry when I was 19 in telesales, learnt a lot about selling, but not from a very transactional point of view, much more about relationships, and then built a really interesting career, and then wanted to be a full-time mummy. And so at 28, I stepped out, and then at 33, came up with the idea of Ecademy, which was the world's first social network for business.
Had you gone back into work prior to setting up the business? Or?
For that 5 years while I was having my three children, I did a bit of interim stuff. And I did an interesting one where some guys left Dell, some guys that worked directly for Michael Dell, and they set up a home sale of home PCs just as the PC was going into the home. So that must have been 1995. And so set up a network of 640 agents. Selling computers into the home and going in and doing sort of tech evenings in schools to teach parents why having a computer at home would be good for their kids. So I did that, but it was always around my kids.
No, we can't get them away from the kids if they didn't have a computer, an iPad or a telephone.
I know, it's sad, isn't it, really?
I know. I was like my daughter. She's 12, and I always make a joke with her. The iPhone was born in the same year she was. I think the iPhone came out in like the June or something. And, she was born in September. And I remember getting my first telephone when I was like 17 or 18. A bright pink brick. And if she's not got it in her hand, simultaneously texting, WhatsApping, and posting on Instagram, they're unable to communicate.
I know, and that's one of the scary things, is because you wonder how much they're relying on that for their validation of who they are. That whole thing is really interesting. That's another subject. There's a really interesting aspect to this that's I get contacted a lot about it by parents. So how do you manage this? Anyway, that's a whole new. That's another topic.
I was about to start talking as well, but no. And tell me, because I mean, 1998 was a bit before my time in terms of in terms of knowing what was going on with the social networks. Just tell us about how you set the business up and what it did.
So I was sitting in Pizza Express with our three kids with my husband, and it was actually in February 98, and he was doing e-commerce and e-procurement, and it was just when everybody was registering their websites thinking they were going to be .com millionaires, and I wasn't really that excited about, I said sales will always find a channel to market, wasn't something that was really floating my boat, but he had just sold his business and he'd gone into self-employment, and I had watched. He's a great networker. I mean, the best that I've ever met in my life. He's an incredible networker, Thomas. And but because he was self-employed, he was doing all the selling and the delivery, and it made networking really hard because you get really busy when you're delivering for a client. And so I said to him, wouldn't it be amazing if we could create a community where people could network all over the world online as business people? And he said, that's quite an interesting idea. And it didn't exist. It was 4 years before LinkedIn. There was MySpace and Friends Reunited, but there was nothing in the business sector. So he came up with the idea calling it Ecademy, which actually stood for E-commerce Academy at the time. And it was about how could we network people in that world. And then when we started it, we got an early investor involved, put in £250,000. We started it actually believing the offline was really important as well as the online. So we had an event at IOD and that year, and I stood on a wine case in the cellar room of the IOD, and 29 people came, and I told them this idea. Then we set up the website and we built it, and it ended up being global in 52 countries, 650,000 people as members, and it was beautiful. It was a stunning experience. Yeah.
What happened to it? What was the journey? Did it get bought or what?
So I actually write about it in this book, because my chapter 2 is being broken, and I think you talk about a similar experience. But it grew and it was beautiful, and it wasn't just beautiful. It wasn't that it was beautiful in terms of a lifestyle it was giving us. The whole intention of it was to create friendship in business, and that's what we really believed in, is that the integrity of people knowing who you are as well as what you are in business. This was before Facebook was in the business world as well. I mean, Facebook didn't launch till 2006. But what happened was it was growing fantastic. We had to educate the market to begin with, because there was no such thing. So you're trailblazing, you're educating the market. It makes it slow to get to a tipping point when you're educating a market. And Reid Hoffman, who was on our platform, he then started LinkedIn in 2004. And what was,
when you say he was on your platform,
yeah,
as a user, as a member?
Yeah, and I mean, there were a lot of people. I'm not saying he necessarily used it a lot, but he was one of our members. There was always, like all communities, you get your lurkers and you get your active people. But he was very clever, because he started this business network at a time when business people wanted to be separate to their home life. It wasn't really till Twitter came in 2008, people started to merge the two.
Sure.
So it was when people said, well, this is what I am, and I'm on LinkedIn, but nobody's going to know about my home life. That's my home life. And whereas Ecademy was really about both you as a whole person, who you are and what you do. And he also went after the corporate market and grew and raised $330 million to be able to do that. And so once Facebook came in and then Twitter, our business model started to get really challenged, because we were a subscription-based model. We didn't want to sell people's data. We didn't do advertising.
You didn't have any free service?
We had a very early free, but for you to actually be able to blog on it, which we had a fantastic community blog, it was the biggest in the world, business blog in the world, to blog on it, to run a group, to do anything where you were really, it was about trust. You had to put your credit card in so that we could authenticate that you were who you were. So we had to keep the trolls, not that term was around then, but the people who wanted to be anonymous. And we could start seeing them emerge. And then obviously the free world came in. That the book written called Freemium, go from free to premium, really started to emerge then, and our business model got challenged. So in 2008 we went to the banks and borrowed £250,000 to pivot the business model, and that meant saying to our members, actually, to be free you are going to become the product, like we see now, and see why Mark Zuckerberg's been subpoenaed and what you're doing with the data. But we didn't believe in that. People were only paying £10 a month, but the subscription model then, software as a service, hadn't emerged. People didn't expect to pay for things. So the bank, it was all going very well. We were shifting the business model, changing it into high premium and free. And then 3 years into that, the bank that we borrowed from hit the banking crisis in 2011.
Been there.
And they called our loan in 2 years early and gave us 30 days notice. And then at that time, by then my husband and I weren't taking an income. We'd sold the house in order to secure the children's education whilst we were building the business. So we were no guarantees, it was hell. And so we then had 30 days to save our baby. And we went frantic around London, 27 days, meeting with these revolting people that buy businesses as, do the Phoenix thing and buy it. And we ended up selling the business for £1.
Oh, really?
In 2012, and very painful.
What became of it since?
It was bought by someone, and it was a very painful day when they changed the name. But my husband was thrilled, because they weren't going to continue it with the same ethics and ethos, so it no longer became related to us. And it was bought by an insurance company, and they wanted to have a transactional model behind this community that they bought.
So just I guess just going back onto some of the questions for a second. Tell me, what would you say the best decision you've ever made is?
First of all, the best ever decision was to marry my man. He's a fantastic guy, and he believes very much in me, and I believe in him. But I would say starting Ecademy, coming up with the idea of Ecademy. I can't say it was a decision; it was more of a light bulb moment.
Sure.
But that has opened up a world of me being able to create a personal brand, which nowadays is critical in business. it opened up a whole world where I learnt really strongly how to build community, and that's not something that you can learn academically. I think you need help from people, so that's given me the opportunity to become a coach and support other people who want to build community, because I know how to do it. Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of it. I mean, even today, all over LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, people are constantly referring to Ecademy because it was the roots of a lot of people's networks, and so I'm really proud of it. So I never regret Ecademy, even though it broke us. It made us as well.
Well, I was going to ask you my next question. What your scariest moments along the way was?
Well, that was it.
Would you say it's getting the loan called in and those
it
30
was,
days
but
trying to find
I think
out?
when you're in hell, anybody who's in hell, you fight, because I bet you know that feeling. It's afterwards that you realise how hard it was, because when you're in it, you fight for survival, don't you?
Yeah.
So you're highly charged and you're fighting for survival. And actually, because we then went into scarcity, and I started another business in scarcity and got the wrong investors involved, and then I went into 4 years with that business and those challenges. Then during that period, a lot of personal crisis hit our family, traumas that happened to my daughter, and to deaths of my sister lost her daughter to cancer, and a few other things. You're just managing a lot, putting oxygen masks on a lot of people. And it wasn't till November last year, actually, so that was 5.5 years after those 30 days, that I was delivering a workshop to 40 people on how to build your profile online. And people's faces started to change in front of me. I was hallucinating. And they started to change into the faces of the trolls that had trolled me in the past. And it was a very scary experience. And I ended up going to hospital thinking I'd had a stroke or something, but I was then diagnosed with PTSD and physical exhaustion, mental exhaustion. And actually, I think it took a long time for a lot of the traumas of business and life to hit me.
What were you getting trolled for at the time for the downfall of Ecademy?
No, we got trolls when we set up Ecademy. We wrote an ethos and ethics charter, and interestingly, we hired corporate psychologists when the trolls started. This was before they had the term trolls, and police didn't even know what they were. Nobody had a community to experience it. But there were 17 people that, as soon as you created rules, they wanted to fight the rules. And there were profanity rules and racism rules and things about how to treat a global community. And these 17 people wanted to damage the business because they didn't like the rules.
17? Oh, there
were 17, 17.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, I could name them all. I won't do it. But and we got the police involved, but there was no legal precedent. In fact, we helped to raise the legal precedents around trolling. And so they stalked us. They desperately tried to damage us because we banned them. And they were definitely part of our downfall. And they'll be proud if they heard this to know that. But they were just nasty people. And I still see them on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook, and they continue to be nasty people. And interesting, a corporate psychologist said that when people go have their own business, there's a level of independent streaks that they probably had when they were children. So they probably hated their teacher, then they hated their first boss, and now you've got some level of authority and they have to hate you. And it was part of our journey.
It's an interesting point to discuss, isn't it? I mean, I'm involved in the peer-to-peer lending industry.
Yes.
And my pet hate, or should I say pet hate, ongoing gripe is the people in the forums who write about our platforms or our loan products that we put on there, and whether or not this is the right way to behave with it, and I might be completely generalising and being obnoxious to some of the more quality trolls, but I think what used to really wind me up in the beginning, I very much came to the realisation that if these people have got the time to be writing all this shit online, that they can't possibly be a credible person behind it, and the kind of people that we worry about, what am I trying to say? The kind of people whose opinion we care about are probably not going to be the kind of people who are going to get their opinions formed by these utter morons. I
think it depends on two things. One, when it was happening to us, it wasn't happening to anyone else, so it feels very personal. Yeah. And secondly, it depends what your own level of resilience is at the time that it's happening to you. And I mean, it's interesting you say about the peer-to-peer lending. So last year, I did a crowdfund, and it was going really well. You have to get on this platform we chose. You have to get to 50% funded
offline before, and then they
yeah. Well, and so we had all this funding, but they still you line it up, and then when you go live, you tell them. But they didn't switch the page your crowdfund to their investors until you were 50% funded.
Yeah.
And when we got to 50% funded, it then became open rather than just the people I shared it with. And one of our trolls came back in, and I had pre-warned this crowdfund that this is the first time I'm emerging back into public space again properly. And they said they would protect me, but they didn't. And they didn't reply for 36 hours. And this guy wreaked havoc inside about me. And I saw my investors pulling down their... So I ended up having to pull the crowdfund as a result of it, because I wasn't going to accept it. And it was actually that triggered my PTSD hallucination moment. And I think there is a problem with any community or any platform that the owners don't actually understand. This is some of the work that I do now with community people, understand how much they need to protect the ethics and the emotional management of the people that are on their platform.
I think that in most of these tech style businesses now, I don't think the owners of the platforms, I'm generalising, but
emotionally intelligent.
Well, I don't think they particularly understand much other than the tech. If we talk about fintech, I always say that fintech's far too much tech and not enough fin. And I'm sure you can apply a similar
nice,
euphemism for these other businesses that people are just building a better mousetrap, if you like. You're creating a piece of tech to deliver something, but missing out on the fundamentals of what what
humanity,
the underlying business, the humanity, whatever that may be.
That's probably, although I can't make a living out of that. Although my next business is I'm bringing Ecademy back in another form now, and I think people are becoming wise to the fact that social networking, social media is impacting the mental health of people, not only teenagers but business owners in all sorts of ways. Either the dopamine effect of the addiction, the reward system of the like, and whether it's still productive for them to spend their life on social media, or the impact of compare and despair, where you constantly compare your life with people that you're watching online, and you feel small and that you lack and aren't really leading the life you want to lead, because you're trying to lead a life that everybody else is leading, which doesn't necessarily add up for you. So I think there's this chasm that we're all going through from no social networking to a life where everybody's doing it. There's a lot of re-education, and I'm sure it will balance, but I think it is an issue now. Even though I've been the evangelist of it right from the start, I think it is a problem.
For sure. So tell me, do you have any mentors when you were setting up your business? Do you have any now? Well, I guess you're probably a mentor to many, but
it's really interesting because I didn't realise in my exploration this year about myself and how I should fit in and be able to cope with the business world. I've learned a lot about myself, but in interviewing a lot of other business owners for my book, I've learned a lot about the natural aspects of business people. And to be a business owner, you have to be naturally independent. But one of the overdone strengths of an independent person is they don't ask for help. And I've met a lot of people, there's this 83% of small businesses and business owners that I interviewed online, it was a survey, said they were lonely because they were isolated. And I think a big part of that is your lack of your desire to be independent.
Were these all UK business owners, or were they worldwide?
No, it was online, it was worldwide. And so I was very typical of that. I didn't feel I wanted to ask for help. And also, because I went very high profile very quickly, I felt like I had to be the oracle.
Sure.
I shouldn't be asking for help, which was the wrong attitude to have, because I always believed in the servant leadership model. So this year is my first year of really going out and showing a vulnerability and asking for help. And
it's really interesting what you said, because I guess I've come from a similar back history on that and a viewpoint. The reason I asked why if your survey was UK based or worldwide, because I think as well the whole like you say, being the oracle or the lack of mentorship, or feeling that you were better than it is very much a British thing as well. You know, that
right.
stiff upper lip. But I mean, I guess I was the same during my younger years, and I've been talking a lot recently about how if I could have changed one thing, 5, 10, 15 years ago, it would be that that I had some mentors earlier on in the game.
Yeah.
Well, don't get me wrong, I was never afraid to ask for some advice, if you like, but that was probably more done in general conversation than that. There were some people I was specifically looking out for, I guess leadership views, business advice, and how to get from A to B.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. I mean,
it's also I think when you're cutting edge, and I've always been a bit of a trailblazer with all 3 business ideas. It's finding people that you respect enough because they can see what you can see. And I know that sounds bloody arrogant, and there is a level of arrogance in there. But, when I launched a social network, there wasn't many people that knew how to do that.
But I think as well, it's about realising that you can take different levels of advice or different styles of advice from different kinds of people. That probably goes back to that that oracle comment of that it's not about finding that one oracle who knows everything about everything, exactly. Because I guess realistically, if they did exist, then they're not going to want to talk to. They're not going to want to talk to us, are they? But it's finding the people who can help you
in different aspects.
Yeah, whether it's a specific ongoing aspect of the business or an individual problem. I think we just all have to realise that so many people have been there and experienced what it is we're going through, and that doesn't have to be a very complicated business program. It could be in any aspect of life. Whether it's a new parent looking for some advice on how to get a crying baby to sleep quicker, or
you're absolutely right.
If you're a sports person, how to do a better tennis swing. Someone doesn't have to be, a world champion in every aspect of their life.
Yeah, I completely get. And actually, this year, I call myself a torchbearer on now the subject of managing your emotions and mental health, because I've seen a psychologist, I've done group therapy, and I've met with a lot of people who specialise in, say, resilience or understand how to build your boundaries, and it's been phenomenal what I've learned. And definitely, if I had known what I know now, if I rolled back my life 20 years and started a business with my awareness of myself and my emotional and mental vulnerabilities, you can't change who you are, but you can certainly have more of a radar out for the sort of things that you've got to manage differently as a result of your personality. So, and I mean, my big one, which shines out for me, is because I started a business and I put a CEO in place when I started Ecademy, because I wanted to still be very focused on my children. So I wanted somebody else to run the business and I would be the ambassador and run the community. I never really understood money enough. And I had this monster that was called money, which when we were in scarcity and we lost everything, sat under my bed and kept me awake. And then learning as a business person what money and cash flow, I understood how to read a balance sheet, I understood how a P&L worked, but actually understanding how to manage cash flow. And it's something I've now taught my 3 children before they went to uni. We set up a year's cash flow statement, because when you can see the shape of money, now I needed a mentor to teach me that, and it was actually my business partner in my newest business, the Business Cafe, Gail Thomas, who taught me cash flow. And that was 5 years ago, and I was 15 years into being a business owner before I really understood cash flow, because I delegated a lot of it to other people. And I've been fascinated to find out how many people don't understand money who are in business. And I can't criticise them or judge them, because I was the same.
Well, like you said, I mean, it's something that's not, never mind not taught at schools.
Yeah.
It's not taught in life in universities, and I guess it's also one of those things that I think there's teaching it and then there's experiencing it as well. And
absolutely.
I think yes, we could all we can all do with a better level of understanding earlier on in life. But but a lot of the kind of getting into the nitty gritty of the cash flow, whilst running a business, especially whilst running a cash starved business.
Exactly.
That's definitely something that the relevant mentor can help with, because as you'll now know yourself, you can't teach cash flow from a book. But when you've got a business,
don't teach it, and bank managers don't teach it
because they don't know it.
No.
I mean, they probably know less about it than the rest of us.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's wonderful how. I mean, now I look at my cash flow statements sometimes daily, my personal and my business one, and I see the flow of the money, and I can see ahead. And when I get, say, booked for a speaking slot, and I put it in, and I can see how it shapes the business going forward, and it's incredible. And that's something that I think is so fundamental to a startup. My understanding cash flow and understanding your mental and emotional vulnerabilities, to me, those are critical. Absolute because everybody starts a business having some primary skill. I've got a skill in something that I want to tell the world or build, but there's secondary skills. There's something you acquire along the line, and those are critical.
So what do you think the best piece of advice you've ever been given is?
Well, I think
learning cash flow from Gail.
Learning cash flow from Gail was critical, but actually I had my first boss when I went into telesales, and I was sent on it when I was 19. I was sent on a telesales training course, and I came back with this method of selling, which you can be taught, and it didn't suit me, and so I sold in a different way in terms of just who I am and the way I wanted to sell, and my boss that really had an impact on me actually celebrated who I was, not the processes.
Sure.
And I think that early stage of being told just to be yourself, know yourself and be yourself. And then he then said something very powerful to me, which I think enabled me to be an entrepreneur. And he said to me, although he was employing me and I had an £18 million target for sales in this tech company when I was sales director, he said, I'm never going to manage your input. I'm only interested in your output. And that was really powerful advice, because we can put in and put in and put in. And I think there's so many ways to distract ourselves when we start our business thinking we're putting in, but actually it's only output that matters. And I think that was really powerful advice.
But I guess I agree with it. If you're a self-motivated person who's going to do the input themselves anyway. Well, I mean, I guess during my career, especially dealing with salespeople, far too often, the reason for lack of output is down to lack of input, and particularly.
Yeah, but if they're measured on output, because people can bluff themselves.
Yes.
I'm working so hard, especially with social media. Number of small business startups that I've mentored and had on mastermind groups that spend their life telling me, I'm doing this. They're just getting lost inside social media, thinking that that's selling. Yeah. Spending their time doing all that input, but they're not actually.
But that's because they're doing the wrong input though as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, yes. I guess it depends how you want to do it. I mean, quite often I'm very lazy, if you like, with sales stuff. I say, listen, I've got no interest in managing you. These are your targets. Deliver. But I guess I've also come to accept it's not necessarily the right answer, because you've got people putting it, well, either one of two things, or either doing no input, which is why there's no output, or they're doing all the wrong input.
Yeah. So that does remind me of some other advice that I got from my first person that trained me in being a sales manager. It's called the QQD formula: quality, quantity, and direction of sales. So you're doing the right quality of calls, and are you directing it to the right people? And you got the right quality proposal and skills. And so, you're absolutely right. If the input's not right, you're right. But I think you can also, when you run your own business, you start off self-employed, you can get sort of sucked into thinking you're busy.
No, 100%.
Yeah. So I mentioned primary and secondary skills. What would you say was your primary skill that you've made money from having that skill?
Now you're putting me on the spot,
I know,
right?
I love it.
Now, I think for me, I guess my primary skills, I'd say, is that I put the effort in. I think, I don't think, whatever line of business it is, or whatever it is you want to achieve in life, nothing happens. There's no overnight success. Whether you're wanting to, to build a great business, or to write a book, or to be a great sportsman. There's all those years and years of work and hours of daily grind that go into it before the overnight success. And I think my second skill, if you like, is I believe I'm a very strong networker. And for me, networking and your network itself forms a basis of all your success. Right. I think it's deluded to think that we achieve anything on our own, and we need a strong network to I guess get through the simple things, and also to be able to make the connections to kind of power drive your business forward. And I've always been very strong at building my own network.
And is that the most common thing across all? How many businesses have you had? 3 main businesses.
I
know you're an investor in them.
I've probably had 4 or 5 things where I was the sole owner, if you like.
And what's the commonality of those businesses?
I guess the commonality has always been, I think, definitely my contact base. I mean, yes, bringing funding to businesses, whether it's me bringing my own funds or me bringing the right investors in, has been something that I guess is one of the biggest things that I bring to the party if I'm investing or partnering up with people. And I guess that base of investors that I would bring is constantly being honed by me, and and I guess whether it's meeting new people for personal life, meeting new people for meeting new people for business life, ultimately for me everything comes down to absorbing as many new relationships as possible, and knowing that at some point everybody will probably have a potential use in the future.
So you obviously hold on to your connections for a long time when you make them.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I guess everyone I meet, I'll either try and deal with in a business or personal capacity. I mean, I was talking to someone this morning about this, and it's not about meeting someone. Going, oh, great, what can I suck out of them? What can they do for me? Most of my best relationships are genuine friends anyway, because I think I always believe that I'd rather do business with someone that I like than someone. That's an obvious statement, but we could all say, well, I'll only do business with people that I enjoy dealing with. I say the same thing, but I guess we've probably all got our financial threshold where we'll happily deal with someone that we don't like if the price was right.
It is personal to you when you're running a business. It is personal, isn't it?
100%. I think there's that old adage of you can't do a good deal with a bad person, I think if you're feeling lack of trust or you're feeling uncomfortable, like you said, it's a time to walk away. And look, it's easier said than done. Insofar as I've got people in my roster of go-to people at the moment who are very much my partners of last resort, but I guess I'm kind of quite upfront with them about it.
But you know how to handle them.
That's the thing, and
that's the critical thing.
And I'll kind of joke with these people that they know things must be bad for me to be coming to deal with them.
Yeah. And you manage it all in your head, nowhere near your heart when you're dealing with that.
I mean, I think, like you say, it's easier if you've got multiple options, and it's easier if you've been there before. I mean, I guess obviously you were telling me your story about how you had your investor change their mind on you at the very last minute, and it's very easy to say in hindsight, well, that's when I should have walked away. But then again, if you did walk away, maybe what were the options? Were there any other investors around? Would the business have even gotten off the ground? Hindsight is a wonderful thing, but yes, I mean it's dealing with people who you can trust is fundamental to business success and sanity at the same time.
That to me is the key thing, sanity, because that's where, when I've interviewed a lot of people, when they've lost control of their life, why are we in business if it's not to actually have a better life? And I've got a checklist in my book of the 8 things when you're out of control. And actually that's when stress takes place, and it's getting back into control, because if it's your business, it is personal. And you know your own triggers when you lose that control, don't you?
100%.
Have you ever been in a situation where you feel that somebody is taking over the control of the business that you actually...
Yeah. I've been there before. I mean, typically you're in that situation. You know, I guess when you know times are tougher, but you know invariably the people trying to take over and make the mark, you know, don't understand the business as well as you, and don't have, you know, well, certainly don't have the business's best interests at heart.
They're working to another agenda, aren't they?
Exactly, but then again, yeah, it's almost I guess it's almost an irrelevant point because at that stage you're probably unable to, you know, to either fund the business or make those decisions yourself anyway. But it's not, I guess it's not normally just a, you know, an ego thing of, oh, you know, these guys are taking over and, you know, they're making decisions that I didn't want to make and I've lost control of my business. You know, more times than not, you know, that I see or that I've been involved in, you know, when these people do start to, you know, try and shape the business into their way, it's actually, you know, the beginning of the end anyway. Because, you know, whilst things may have gone wrong for a moment, and that's why, you know, you're needing external help, you know, fundamentally no one knows your business better than you do, and you know you're the one that grew it, you're the one that built it, and I guess, you know, what you really need is a kind of a mentor and angel, you know. But what 99 times out of 100 you get is a ruthless corporate raider, and ultimately nobody particularly wins. So
I remember hearing a phrase, it was actually in a book called Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Have you heard of it?
I think I've heard
and
of the
he
book,
wrote
maybe.
about positive surrender, and it really helped me because we all think something is a failure if you walk away. I failed, I've been weak, but actually it can be really strong. But and you have to think, am I positively surrendering this situation in order to gain back control of my life? And that really helped me when I had to make that decision. With the second business I had, I ended up saying to them, we've got to sell this business. I can't work with you, you can't work with me. And we had to work together for 18 months till we exited the business together. But I see that as positive surrender. I think I took back divorced in business, but I was in control of it. And from that day onwards, I felt better.
But, you know, it's interesting you say that, you know, you were getting divorced in business, and I think for me these aren't just, you know, in business, this is like in personal relationships, or, you know, in personal divorce,
exactly.
everything, you know, as soon as, you know, I guess emotions and ego become involved, you know, everything gets worse for everyone involved. And, you know, and I only talk about it because you mentioned, you know, the word divorce. But I mean, if you look at every divorce, you know, it's very easy for us to say, because it's not us getting divorced, but, you know, look how much heartache and money waste and everything else goes in, because people can't, you know, I guess accept that, you know, this isn't working for either of us.
Let's be as pleasant as we can be.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
So tell me, what future plans have you got you can tell us about?
So I launched my book in January, which I'm very excited about. So this is it. Business is Personal.
Business is Personal.
Yeah. So
where can we buy it?
So it'll be on Amazon, on my website, in bookshops and stuff. And the strapline is "Be the leader of the life and business you want." So that's.
You've got your bookmark in there. You're not still reading it, are you?
No. That was from another interview. And then my entrepreneurial dream. So I always say I've got my small business dream, which is work I do on a day-to-day basis that brings in income. So that's my mastermind groups, my speaking, my book, my coaching, and that's to help others. And then my entrepreneurial dream is the business cafe, and the business cafe is taking a lot to get off the ground because I need investment. And it's basically like putting social networking on the high street for business. So it's a business cafe.
Okay.
And it's got a great model behind it. And my dream is to, before I die, is to see a business cafe in every town, where business people, rather than sitting on their own at home or in a co-working space, which doesn't suit everyone, can go into a cafe and have a nice coffee and be in a business community in there. So
actually, I was going to. My next question was going to be if I was to give you an investment or a business loan for something you're not doing now. What would it be for? But let's take it back to that then, and obviously that's not your speaking career and your book. So let's say that's something you're looking to fundraise for. Just talk me through it a little bit more insofar as the people who are in this cafe. How did they get there?
So,
are they members? Is it?
So it's a membership, but it's free. You know, I've been bitten by the things being charged. It's free, but you do join. And it's a sort of a beautiful business lounge environment. It feels nice, but it's on the high street, right in the centre of a community, regenerates the high street, which is great, brings people in. And it's open, it's got a licence, it's got a grand piano for evening events, it's licensed for drinks in the evening, but it's basically putting business community into each high street, and somewhere where you can go and just have a coffee rather than sitting in Starbucks or Costa on your own. You're actually in a community. In terms of if you were going to invest, that's very nice. I'll go into pitch mode. We're actually building the platform for it, which is called the Skills Orchard, and that's actually creating a that's going to start. Tech is where people invest in tech, because you can build a tech platform and you can generate revenue from that. And everybody fears bricks and mortar, and I realise that because I've been pitching this for 2 years, and everybody fears bricks and mortar. So the Skills Orchard is pick your skill, and that is where digital skills, say I know how to do Facebook advertising and you don't,
Yep.
you would go onto a marketplace called the Skills Orchard. I would be advertising that I can show you how to do Facebook advertising. You and I would book a time online,
Go and do it in the business cafe.
and eventually, but you would actually I could do a Zoom with you or meet you in a cafe and do that over a coffee. And that's a platform that we've got it ready for investors now. We only need 40 grand to get it going. And then that starts the revenue model for the business cafe, because it's a business cafe asset.
Okay. Well, I look forward to receiving your business plan.
Right, it will be on its way.
And final question I always like to ask all my guests before they leave is how you would like to be remembered after you've gone.
Yeah, I gave that some big thoughts, that.
But you have to answer it very specifically in the context
Okay.
of how would you have your tombstone written?
Penny appreciated every moment. Would be on my husband told me that about 20 years ago. I'm very much a moments person.
That wasn't when he was planning on knocking you off, was it?
Oh, that sounds nice. No, I get very excited. I just make sure I capture every moment. Every moment in life can be very special, but you can just rush past them. Moments are really important. But also to be happy. I think that my daughter said a wonderful thing. I said to her that my first date with Thomas, I said to him, whoever I marry doesn't need to worry, because I'm not going to rely on anybody else making me happy. Happiness, I have to generate my own happiness. And my daughter flew off to Bali in January to start her new life and to become an entrepreneur and start a business out there.
She got out there, with
She's
family?
Gone out there on her own to create a digital business, but you can do it anywhere.
Okay.
And so she chose to do it out there. And she said to me, I know you've always told me that you can't delegate happiness, but you do also need to fight for it. And I am a happy person. Sometimes I've had to fight for it because I've had some traumatic times in my life. But I would like to be remembered as someone who was always happy.
Cool. Well, I like it. Simplicity is the best ones.
Yeah.
Listen, Penny, thanks so much for being here. It's been really great to meet you. Loved your story. Hope you guys did too. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much.